The forum conversation we're going to have about things affecting the village and this spiritual exercise in the civic faith that we will all engage in. The way I sort of like to do it, I'm open to changing that if somebody has a better idea, but the way I propose to do this is to have it more of a conversation. I'll ask an opening question, then I'll go to some issues, and then there'll be closing statements from each of the three candidates for village trustee, and then Ralph and I will have a conversation which may refer to some of the things said earlier, because Ralph is running for also, and he won't be able to think of anything to say, Ralph is running for both trustee but also for leader. And that's a somewhat different set of challenges. So I think it'll be fun to have just a conversation on what that entails in this village. If anybody feels that I'm being unfair or the distribution of time is inequitable or anything's wrong or whatever, just speak up and I'll try to make amends for that and compensate. And I'm not going to say too much because I don't know nearly as much as they do, and I try to avoid public humiliation as much as possible. So with that, that's why I don't run for stuff. With that, let's begin with, let's do a different order. We'll just start with Bruce. And the big trick question of the night is, why are you running for village trustee?
Hello everyone, I'm running for village trustee because I'm born and raised in Cold Spring, been involved with community service since I was 18, multiple organizations, always doing things that either raise money, put it back into the village, or serve time to make the village a better place. I served on the village board from 2002 to 2006. At that time I lost the election in 2006 to Mayor Gallagher. Shortly after, I was voted in up here at Haldane for 3 years on the Board of Education. After my son graduated in 2008, I spent 1 more year as vice president of this Board of Education here at Haldane, 1 more year. And after that year, I ran again in 2009 for village trustee, and I've been on the boards from 2009 until now. The past 4 years, under Seth Gallagher as mayor, he appointed me as deputy mayor. During those 4 years, I'm a member of the Audit and Finance Committee, co-chair of Highway Department, co-chair of the Public Works, co-chair of the Waterfront Development, chair of the Route 9 Corridor Safety, chair of the Village Personnel Department, liaison to the Recreation Board, liaison to the Haldane School Board, liaison to the Special Board. We worked on PBA contractor negotiations with the Police Department because they didn't have a contract in place for many years, through arbitration. Most recently, was appointed to the liaison to the Historical Review Board. I worked with Mayor Gallagher pretty much on a daily basis. I'm in the office pretty much every day, so I got involved with many, many daily duties, phone calls from residents' concerns. I chaired the 4th of July event, our community day, for the past 4 years. Chaired the senior citizen picnic for the past 4 years, even though that is an event that's pretty much done by everyone to serve the seniors. Everyone on the board serves the seniors once a year. I've coordinated a bunch of work through the Putnam County Sheriff's Department, work at the bandstand, work at the dock, some work on the Village Hall, and we have work scheduled this spring down at Mayor's Park. And that's through the inmate program. All the labor is done for nothing. All the money that pays for the materials are pretty much raised through our weddings and different events that we rent our facilities out to. I worked with it, establish an intermunicipal agreement with Phillipstown and Putnam County to share services and equipment, establish legal dam access for our dam work that you'll hear about maybe tonight if we all have the opportunity to talk about our dam work and the work that needs, or especially at our upper dam. And other than that, there's other things that I've done, but I can continue to go over everything. But really, to answer your question, I want to continue that work as long as I'm healthy, as long as I'm able to. I want to follow through with that kind of a plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I won't ask the logical follow-up question, which would be, having done all this, why on earth you would want to keep doing it, but it just absolutely makes me tired. But that's the courage of running for political office. Stephanie, why are you doing this?
Well, I believe that I have some skills and some personal attributes that can be very useful to the village. I'm somebody who really likes to roll up my sleeves and get work done and put my shoulder to the wheel and take care of sort of the needful things. And I think that that can help on a village board that works collaboratively and shares responsibility. And I'd like to work in that way with my colleagues on the village board. For the last 20 years, I've been negotiating agreements for for a living. And in that work, I have been successful by bringing two parties together. And in that work, I need to work with my business people and take into consideration their needs, their desires, what their ultimate goals are at the end of a project, and balance them with the needs of a negotiating partner. And in this work, it's very important to be consistent and steady, and to make sure both sides are always able to express their concerns about it, and both parties need to feel comfortable with the agreement, because ultimately at the end of when the agreement is signed and tucked away in a file, these two parties need to be able to work together to achieve an outcome that is successful for both. And you can't have that kind of positive working environment unless you're able to carefully and progressively negotiate, balancing the needs of both parties. And third, it's very important to me that the village board as a collective is able to be respectful and warmly receive the contributions of residents and stakeholders. You don't have to be a resident of the village to have an interest in what goes on here. And I think I've learned through personal experience that getting up and speaking or participating in activities that enlist public input can be very gratifying and can really help people who go to the trouble of thinking about issues and having something to say and contribute. Making sure that it's important to me to make sure that people feel like that is working for them, that they have a role to play. Everyone has a role to play. We're a very small community, and I'd like to see that sort of spirit of welcoming and respect. You know, we don't necessarily all have to agree on the same issues, but it's important to be able to have an exchange of ideas. So those are three things that I believe could be very valuable and useful to the village, and I would love the opportunity to put them to work for the village.
I'm running for trustee because I'm born and raised in Cold Spring. I honestly, truly love the village. I love the people. I've lived here for most of my 36 years, and I'm now raising a family here. My father was a small business owner here for over 30 years, right in the center of the village. He was an auto mechanic. He actually owned Kenny's Garage before Kenny owned it, and then he owned the one right in the center of town here that's now a convenience store. So my entire childhood was spent basically surrounded by the people of Cold Spring. When my father finally passed away back in 1990, I kind of feel like I was raised by Cold Spring. So to kind of come back and be an active participant here it means a lot to me. For the past 8 years, I've been a volunteer in emergency services. I've been president of the Cold Spring Fire Company for the past 5 years. Just to kind of control that motley group of men, with your men and women, excuse me, that you're very familiar with. I think that gives me a special skill set to bring forward to the village board. I became more involved on the village board level when, kind of through some of the issues of the past 2 or 3 years, where I kind of was dealing intimately with Mayor Gallagher. I believe that we could raise the bar on the village board and really do a lot of things better. Kind of the foundation platform of my platform is transparency and open government. I believe that things should be released proactively to people rather than the citizens or the taxpayers having to foil for them or to, go to court to get documents from the village. I was really concerned about some of the things that happened over the last 2 years, mainly the use of the village attorney. I felt like the mayor was kind of given a carte blanche, blank checkbook to go out there with the village attorney, and it basically came to a point where he was acting as his own personal attorney, and I don't think we can allow that kind of thing to go on. So it was just those kind of, the exposure to the village board and the way that it was operating that kind of got my attention and made me become more civically involved in Cold Spring politics and really start to attend the meetings. So I mean, it's really my love for the village, my concern for the village that has brought me to this point.
I hadn't planned on doing this, but based on just what I've heard, I thought I'd just like to offer any one of the three of you a chance to have a follow-up comment on anything you've heard from each other, or anything you'd like to add before I go into some specific issues. Anything anyone wants to?
The only thing I can say is that the village board really worked what I believe is fairly hard at trying to become more transparent. Of course, as Mike brought up a number of things in conversation that I can agree that we can still do more. If people would like to hear podcasting, we had podcasting at a Haldane here just about all our meetings, and we had video at other meetings. So when video finally was able to make it to Cold Spring, it was sort of a big achievement. But with people's work schedules, of course, it calls for that, calls for more of that. There's, for those that can't make it on Tuesday nights, the fire people, firemen, firewomen can't make it. The Haldane board, some members can't make it. They all meet on Tuesdays. So if there's changes to that, that's what really comes out from the mayor's office. When Mayor Falloon eventually gets down to where he does his reorg, we can vote on another night as far as having our meetings on another night if it's acceptable for everyone. But I'm definitely up for more transparency or making those kind of things available to the public, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Is it possible for the candidates to speak a little louder? It's a bit hard to hear.
That's a good idea. We don't have mics, and yeah, sorry.
And address us rather than the moderator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Make it a little tougher.
well,
I know. But
Okay.
it's so nice and insulated down here when we just get to turn and address the
I don't know if I can repeat that word for word, but I can get
Yeah.
pretty close. But, I'm basically just saying that I do appreciate the fact that we do have video at our monthly meetings in the village. And we did have podcasting here at Haldane because that was a request from the public. And for more transparency, whatever it may be, I think the board's open to that type of suggestion once the new board's in place. So the transparency piece, I definitely would agree on doing as far as Mike's comments to that.
I think just to add on to that, we have made leaps and bounds in terms of open government and transparency, and actually Phil Heffernan, who's in the crowd, was one of the spearheads of the new village website. And now that we have that ability in place, there's no reason we can't be 100% compliant with the open meetings law and proactively putting things onto the website, such as action items and agenda items and resolutions that are brought up at village board meetings. I mean, last night was a good example where there were 17 items on the agenda and there was a one-page agenda posted to the village website. There was a lot of business conducted last night that people in the crowd had no clue. They couldn't follow along. So, if that was available beforehand where you could pull it up on your iPad or phone, I think that is something that we should strive for.
Good. Actually, the sort of process and ways in which village meetings conducted have become something that we're all talking about. So it's a question I want to come back to a little bit later. But first, I guess we have to get this one out of the way. If we can all stand to hear the words Butterfield one more time. And I think we're going to have to, because as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I know less about Butterfield than I think anybody in this room. My understanding of the current state of the situation is that it is static. It states that there is nothing on the table, no proposals are there. So as of now, the actual state of affairs is there is land owned by a private individual, Mr. Calero, and he has put forward several proposals, and they've come and gone. But the state of play at the moment is nothing is actually advanced. So I think one thing, I don't have to ask you, but I think you would all agree that probably something should happen.
Yes.
Any of you think
Oh.
that it should remain a state of nature as it is now? Okay.
Not at all.
Good. So having achieved that degree of unanimity, let me then ask you what you would suggest doing to move from this state of stasis to a state of motion, as Sir Isaac Newton would say. Let's start with you.
Okay. Well, last night the village board received from the village attorney a
I
timeline.
think, Stephanie, can you, I'm sorry we don't have...
Should I stand up?
Yeah, well, you maybe stand up or project to the people and not
Okay.
to me. Okay.
Alrighty. Last night at the village board meeting, for those of you who didn't attend, the village attorney went through and reviewed a timeline, a set of milestones that he had put together for several versions of a process that could be pursued that would address the zoning question and would address the site development question for the developer. And this was prepared at the request of the village board after the property owner, Mr. Galero, had visited the village board 2 weeks ago, I believe, and had explained that he needed assurances that the zoning would be assured, and I think his concerns also had to do with the extent to which he would have to make his way through the process of applying to the planning board and to the historic district review board. He's very interested in understanding upfront as much as he can the issues that the community has, the village board has with the project. And so I think at this point, I think that I know that the attorney had offered last night to the village board that he could reach out and speak to the attorney for the developer and get feedback from the developer and his attorney on the timeline. I think the outside date was 10 months. It would be a 10-month long period to achieve the zoning change and a site development approval. And so it really does rest with the developer on the one hand, and so depending upon what kind of a process he wants to pursue, he can let the village know how he wishes to proceed from here.
Mike, why don't you...
Correct me if I'm wrong. You were sitting 2 seats over.
Yeah, I was sitting right there. I think just to get back to your initial comment is that there is kind of this stasis right now in what you would call probably a Butterfield burnout or a Butterfield all the time. And that's kind of glossing over a lot of the other major issues that are kind of going under the radar in the village that need to be addressed. So I think a plan of action for Butterfield needs to happen. Like Stephanie said, last night, Paul Galero, or 2 weeks ago, Paul Galero had come back to the village board, I think on the prompting of Trustee Francisco and Trustee Hustis, to kind of restart the process. He has a right to build single-family housing anywhere from 5 to 18, depending on what account you read or what law that you're looking at. And yeah, and so I get the feeling that he really does not want to build single-family housing. He wants to work with the people of the village. I think we have a unique opportunity here to sit down with Paul and to work out a plan that fits with our comprehensive plan and with what's in the greater good of the village moving forward. What it does point to at the village level is kind of a breakdown of process. We have right now a developer asking us, well, what is the path to approval? When someone puts an addition on their house or somebody, puts a shed in their yard, there's kind of an expectation that the process will be somewhat swift. We're going at 3 years now with Paul Galero. He's been to the planning board or he's been to the village board numerous times. He's reworked his project, and I believe we're at a stage now where we're getting to a point where we're getting, I think as John Cronin put it at the public hearing, a good project, and don't allow a perfect project to defeat a good project. So.
Bruce, what?
I don't need to repeat. I think everything you've brought up so far is fairly accurate. I know that the bulk of the concerns were brought up from the last public hearing that we had, and we did get quite a few concerns on the project itself. We worked on that project for the past couple of years and started to narrow it down as B4A zoning possibility. And when we heard the concerns that night at the public hearing, of course, it shifted the process to where Mr. Galero suspended his application. After Trustee Husis and Trustee Francisco did have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Galero again, we're at where we're at right now, where Mr. Galero came back to our village board 2 weeks ago, wanted us to be a little more open to where we were going to go in the future, because he was going to lean towards the single-family development. And as of last night, as Stephanie spoke about, it's really coming down to where Steve Gaba, our village attorney, is going to be meeting with Mr. O'Rourke, Mr. Galero's attorney, and I think they know where we're at right now. So I think they hopefully will come up to a reasonable solution for us to move forward on this. We have a secret review that's pretty much part of the process. Might be two of them, one for zoning, the law itself, and one for the environmental study on which could range up to 8 months or more, but if everything works out right, it could be reduced down to even 4 months. So the best case scenario is that whole timeline that Stephanie said, as far as possibly 8 or 10 months, could be reduced down to 4 months if everything worked out between the two attorneys and the village and Mr. Galero's himself. So that's pretty much it.
Let me just follow up a little bit on this. What do each of you think are the one or two, at the most three, substantive issues that need to be resolved for this forward motion to happen? Let's just say, who wants to go first?
Well,
I mean, paralysis doesn't happen just accidentally.
I would say, I think
what is it?
I think probably the most substantive issue that needs to be gotten over is the question of whether or not the property owner and developer is going to actually submit a site plan application for review. I think we're at a place right now where the developer is very reticent about doing that, because he did submit one at one time. He did proceed through that process, and that was not comfortable for him. He ended up withdrawing his application, and so right now he has, to my knowledge, to the extent that I've been involved, is he has said that he does not want to proceed with that until he has certain assurances from the village that he won't experience any difficulty, that there won't be issues, I think, with that application.
So how do we break this situation? He's saying, and in fact, look, I can't go through this forever. I need some indication of this.
And it's true, he can't go through it forever.
But we're saying but other people are saying, until we see what you put on the table, we can't give that to you. So that seems to be where we are. How do we get out of that?
Right.
I think some assurances as to what the makeup of any commercial properties that are going to be at Butterfield, that may be achieved through a formula business plan that is being discussed now, or I think a commitment from. Is there a question?
No, I was just pointing to.
I think a commitment from the county as to what they're going to actually put there would also assure people and kind of do away with some of the fear of just giving him a blank slate to build on.
Again, it comes down to all the issues. I know that both attorneys. It really comes down to I know the attorneys that are that know the issues, and if they don't, if we exhausted ourselves to know that the village had concerns, and Mr. Galero doesn't want to do certain things himself. He mentioned that. He knows that even last night in some of the correspondence we received that he wasn't in favor of certain things. So. He wants to hope that the process can continue based on his original plan, and he's hoping that the zoning change that we eventually put in place, whatever that may be. Some people want us to go back to a PUD, which I'm not sure if he's up for that. I don't believe he is. But the assurance is that whatever plan we put in place, whatever zoning law we eventually adopt or vote on, is going to be good for the village residents as well as for him. So we're hoping that the attorney's at a point so he doesn't have to spend any more money on this project. And we know we want to follow through with everyone that really wants the senior center, wants the post office if it's still available to stay in Cold Spring. And we've already discussed the retail and commercial space enough to know that with the formula ban that we hope to put in place very soon, I think that's going to satisfy most of the concerns. The rest of the concerns are things that we can work out hopefully in the near future, and after that it's going to be the Planning and Historic Review Board that handles a lot of the logistical part from that part on. So all that has to happen in a sense, and I think we're getting closer to it, but it just takes that first mound to get past to. I think we're at that mound right now with the two attorneys meeting and Butler.
Well, it sounds like it might be. As far as I
Sorry for not
know
addressing
from
the
reading the
audience.
general press, Senator Mitchell is not actively engaged in a foreign dispute. Perhaps we could persuade him to come here and kind of help us break the ice. If you go first, if I go first, if we go first. If not, we will be in this situation when we next meet here. One thing that was raised in the course of this that does seem to be one of these commitment questions is the one about the county's commitment. Presumably there's someone within the Postal Service at some level who signs, yes, I will do a 2-year, 3-year, whatever lease or not. So there's somebody there. Legislatures it's a more elusive situation. What's your sense of how likely it is that the legislature does have the power of the purse here, will actually commit to these things that we all feel need to be a part of this to go forward, and they're one of the pieces that are hanging out there. Anybody got a guess?
I don't think a memorandum of agreement from the county should be that difficult to accomplish. I think if the village board can go over and actively lobby for that, go to the legislature meetings and ask for it. I don't know the last time that one of our village board, a sitting board member, actually went to the county. I don't know.
In November, our county executive and our legislator-elect attended, sorry, I'll speak to the audience, did attend a public hearing and did say that they supported bringing services to Cold Spring, and that was something that was in their interest. However, that has not been put on the agenda at the county yet, and it should be. And we do have, I think that, there's been a lot of agitation, very good political activity in the community around the issue of providing a senior center, financing a senior center, and I think that political energy would be very helpful in moving this issue forward at the county level if that energy was focused at Carmel and at the county executive's office and at the legislature, because each one of those legislators, they have a constituency, but they are also responsive to the residents of Phillipstown, the residents of Cold Spring, the people who have an interest in seeing services rendered here, and they need to be ears. They need to give ear to our concerns. And so all of the talk and the anxiety and interest and focus that has been sort of laid at the doorstep at Village Hall about the senior center, I think would also be very, very useful to moving this forward if it was laid at the building in Carmel, 32 Glenida.
Also at the town hall, top of the hill. That might help a little bit.
But when we're talking about county services, though, I mean, yes, I agree. But if we're talking about county services and the county money, we need to go to Carmel and not just send an emissary from our village board, but everybody, this entire room. If you're interested in seeing county services being delivered here, we should all collectively drive over there and represent for ourselves, represent for our community, represent for our seniors. I mean, I think it's the American Legion up the hill is an older building. It is small. It is it doesn't have a very good HVAC system. It's got old kitchen equipment. It's outdated kitchen equipment. It's so outdated that when it breaks, they can't replace it. So some of it's not working, and that's not a dignified way to help provide our elders with a place to go, a place to socialize, a place to communicate with old friends and remain vital. And I think that it's inexcusable, personally. I think that the county really has got to put its money where its mouth is, personally.
Bruce, do you have a different view of
Going out
that?
on a limb here.
No, and again, since we're all able to speak about the same thing, it's how can you not agree with what's being said? I know from the very beginning, when the project was first brought to our attention, it was by Mr. Galera, was pretty much a handshake. Nothing guaranteed, but just saying, would you be interested in space at the Butterfield location if I was to put this project together? And I know we all heard that the legislature in Carmel at that time was interested in it. We all heard that the town was interested in it. The village was definitely interested in it. At that time, the logistics really weren't worked out. They were just said, okay, what would we do in the village? Well, we would maybe look at consolidating our courts with the town and the village. Maybe we'd move our police department up there. So Mr. Galera was kind of looking for square footages based on a handshake. And that's what I believe he had the whole time, not till most recently, where I wasn't sure whether the legislature really did know about as much as I'm just saying right now. I know the town was well aware of it. I know the village was well aware of it. And I know Barbara Scucciamara, most recently elected, is definitely in favor of it, and Ms. Odell as well. So 2 other representatives came to the Butterfield about a month or so ago. They all met there. I haven't heard the outcome because around that same time is when it was almost a point where they suspended the application and put everything on hold for a while. So I'm hoping that everyone, including the legislature, will follow through now once we get past what we talked about earlier. So
I'm hoping to
One
go
little
ahead.
quick follow-up on that. Yes, it does. If we want county services over here, we need to lobby the county. An MOA shouldn't be difficult. But we all know from the sales tax issue that it seems like Putnam County ends at 301. And I think in terms of a senior center or a community center, the village and the town need to make a commitment to the seniors that they are going to find them a new space, whether Butterfield goes forward or not. And I think that needs to be a top priority.
I concur.
So I take it then that none of you would be sympathetic to the legislature taking a position that you go ahead and make these changes, make these commitments, and then maybe we'll give you the money. None of you would be...
I think the then maybe is not,
Yeah.
that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
But
I-
there needs to be a commitment to a new building, whether it's coming from county money or the village is finding space or renovating space or the town is doing it.
And that's the village's responsibility.
If it comes down to that at the end of the day, I think our seniors are important enough that we need to take a hard look at that.
Okay, let me, on behalf of everyone, liberate us for a moment from Butterfield. Enjoy this brief 20 minutes or so of freedom from the word itself, which is beginning to make me nervous even going to Food Town. And let me ask a much easier question. There's right here in our village the concern about the need for or not a new fire home for our fire company. Now, proud to be, I think, just about an official regular member of,
Yes,
they
you are.
found something I can actually do is be a sort of fire policeman. It only happens when there's an incident, don't worry, I have no other authority whatsoever.
Well, there might be a president job open soon.
I've avoided those ever since being the president of my high school student council. I learned everything I needed to know and have never run again. So the question that does come up, though, that's kind of unusual in this situation is because we have public-spirited and volunteer folks, we have a situation where we will certainly have at least one, and actually 2 with Trustee Eustace, and possibly more, members of the independent company, literally an independent entity, the Cold Spring Village Fire Company #1, on the board that will vote about bond issues, I guess, to commit public money to something that they're involved in.
Actually, it will be a referendum.
Referendum.
So
is
we
how it
all
works?
get to vote.
We all get to
Yes.
vote. Okay.
Sorry, does that totally, like, make the question?
No.
You stole the
No,
thunder.
because you'll be asked to have positions and views as you are right now. How do you see the village board handling this? How would you go about handling this? Let's let you go later. Let's start with Bruce.
Jeez, make it easier.
Well, anyway, I'm going to go back just to when I was a boy, and the firehouse at that time was right where our village hall is. So if you think of that, and then eventually moving up to the current location, and many times over the past so many years, a lot of projects were funded to keep that building going, to keep whatever renovations were needed. Of course, even at one point, Mr. Galero even was going to give some property on the Butterfield site for the use of the firehouse. And of course, Ralph Falloon, as our trustee liaison to the firehouse, would update us regularly on the progress of that idea. At the same time, when you go, and though most recently North Highlands just went through and had a brand new firehouse up at their location. They're part of a fire district. And if you visit that facility, you can totally understand why our firemen and firewomen would want an upgraded facility. It's a very nice facility, all modern, all new technology, for anything fire-related, for training and everything you possibly could use. I know that, me personally, I would love to see a new firehouse, because I think it's something that should be looked into, but it definitely would come to a referendum. And I have a list of the second thing that I know I talked about, other than Butterfield, meaning that my second hottest priority is all the capital improvement projects that the village faces, and there's about 15 of them that I have on a list here. When you start looking at all these lists and you start prioritizing those lists, of course, the firehouse being on that list turns out to where we have to discuss it as a board where we're going to prioritize, and with public input at whatever meeting, we can come up with more information on the best solution for a firehouse. So that's pretty much my...
Okay, you want to
Me?
go next? Yeah, and then we'll...
Yeah, just to refer to what Bruce is saying, it does need to be part of a greater capital projects plan. A new firehouse, though, would be nice, and being the fire company president, I would love to see it. Our members deserve it. It's not the top priority of the village. We have wastewater treatment plants and pump stations and everything else, water relining on Main Street that needs to happen before a new firehouse. It would definitely be a referendum item. And I don't believe that even the members themselves would ever aspire to have anything as large or as grand as what North Highlands has. And it would not work in the village. We want to build something that is in the scope and fits in with the character of Cold Spring, and will just satisfy our needs and fit our needs now and into the future. So whether that's a second story with a larger meeting room so that we can fit a ladder truck or more equipment down the road, so be it.
Stephanie?
Oh, well, I think my views are close to those of my colleagues here. It's one of many needful projects in the village. It costs a lot of money. It requires a lot of political will by the community to dedicate the funding for a firehouse to that kind of a project. We are, 2,000 people. We have about 846 taxable parcels in our village, and that can add up to a lot of money pretty quickly if we have a lot of long-term capital projects that start coming online too quickly. And so it must be looked at, examined very carefully.
Okay, before we move to the next, I've only got a couple more. I should point out that Lily Mosier, the secretary of the Cold Spring Village Fire Company, also took the same course I did and has qualified to be a fire policeman of Cold Spring. And I must tell you, having taken the course and the very scary exam with her, you have a lot more to worry about from her than you do from me. So don't mess with her. Okay? Now,
But she's going to be good in a tight spot. She's going to be good, and
She's going to be really good.
for
Oh, yeah,
us.
yeah, she'll be really
We
good.
don't need to fear her. We
I
can,
some of the videos, by the way, were really scary of people doing what we do, getting killed, and we apparently get killed at a higher rate. That's why they put us out there. Because the chief can say, no, we're not going to this building. There are no people there. You're out there, and a truck comes up from another village facing the wrong way, shining the lights in the eyes of the oncoming motorists, and they kill the guy trying to control the, so anyway.
This is why county training is important.
Yeah, it is.
And you had one of the best instructors that we had.
I sure did. Danny Valentine, he was terrific. He was actually easy on me so I could get in.
So now we know how to avoid that situation? Is that what that was about?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
how to avoid getting killed. There's a reason, having been in this area of activity in places like Afghanistan and others, why they put people like me out in the outposts, because we're the most expendable. So the question...
No member of the fire company is expendable. Let's get that clear.
Please tell Matt. At any rate, I know what you're telling me in private. Put this guy under it. Okay. The question of priorities came up in answering the last question. There's been a fair amount of discussion that at my level of sophistication I've been able to pick up about the comprehensive plan and reconciling that with implementation and the village code with the plan. And that's, I tried to read it once, and it's pretty long. There's a lot of things on it. If you had to pick one or two things to start with, what would they, in terms of change or reform, what would those be?
In the, changing in
Changing
the village code,
to implement the comprehensive plan.
I would think it would be bringing the zoning and land use regulations up to speed with the comp plan so that we can implement it as village law. Right now, there's gaping holes in it, and it may have eased Butterfield or made it clearer what the process was if all of those things were in place. But moving ahead, we've got a project down on Marathon. We've got other parcels in the village, like the Campbell property, that need to be rezoned in order to fit with the goals of the comp plan.
So your number one priority would be?
I mean, that's almost the number one priority across the board of moving forward now that we do have a comp plan that's been completed and adopted. In order to bring it about to full action, you need to put that into place.
So you're saying that there's a common element in some of these log jams or standoffs, that if the structural issue underlying it were addressed, things would start to flow.
Yes, and like I said, it's not going to be the last log in the jam. You have others that are coming down pretty close, in the future. So.
Okay. Stephanie?
If I had to pick one item in the comp plan that I would want to see implemented soonest, it would be the formula business restrictions that sort of addresses the question of chain stores in the village. The comp plan referred to franchises and chains and sort of made its recommendation about limiting them. And we're moving through a process of examining an amendment to the law that will restrict them. We've prepared, the special board has prepared a justification memo that identifies impacts of concern and where in the village the law should be applied and what it will preserve for us. And so I've been closely involved in that, and I really would love to see that implemented right out of the gate, even before the election. But I don't know.
No, I can agree with the formula franchise ban as far as being probably the most important, only because it's addressing what we're more concerned at right now up on the Butterfield site. The comprehensive plan in itself there's so many pieces to that plan that each one probably has to be looked at independently. I know Mr. Kearney, who's the owner and developer that plans on doing stuff at the Marathon site, I'm sure is paying very close attention to what's going on at the Butterfield and how the village board's responding to that. That within itself is going to be a very complicated project. We're going to very, very similar. He did propose himself a senior center down there at one point. He did propose so many townhouse type units. He did suppose 13 or 14 regular homes. And access to that location is going to be very difficult. So I know no matter what, we're going to be looking at that one in the near future, whoever's on this village board. And after that, any other piece, part of that comprehensive plan is going to be independently looked at, and every zone change will have to be considered at that time. So we got a lot of work in front of us, you know. So whoever's serving on the village board for the next so many years, 20 years, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it that long, but hopefully if you'd like me to be on the board, I'll remain that long, you know. But no, anyway, that's pretty much my answer on that.
Okay, I have just one more question of a specific nature, and then we'll have closing statements, and there we are, and then we'll talk to the likely mayor. Unless he gets a pass from somewhere, in the meantime, he's stuck. And this concerns something that you guys raised in one way or another in your opening statements that I think has become a general concern, and that is the meetings themselves. Are there things about the meetings themselves, like whether people should be contained within a public comment period, or freelance on their views or comments, or how these meetings should be run, that you would set about changing should you become one of the people on the other side of the table, or Bruce would like to change now, having been on this other side of the table? Why don't we start with you this time, Bruce? What would you change about how these meetings are conducted?
Well, all the years I've been on the board, they've been conducted pretty much the same as they are now. As far as public comment period, you know, we've looked at a number of different ways based on residents' concerns. When I was on the Haldane School Board, it had to be something that was on the agenda that you would have the opportunity to speak about at the end, you know, which made it more realistic. You know, if you're on the board and you have the material that you're going to prepare for, just like residents want to be able to see it on an agenda on the web in advance to be able to know that they're going to show up for that meeting because there's something of concern. The village board pretty much does the same thing. If I know I'm going to be talking about a certain item, or the mayor's going to be talking about a certain item, it gives us the opportunity to go back into a folder and sort of study up on it a little bit so we can answer more correctly. When it comes to 5 minutes, some of the periods at the end are 10, 15 minutes, and sometimes you get large crowds at these meetings, and everyone wants to have the opportunity to speak, and they can't really speak within 2 minutes. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes, and that's what happens in public hearings, you know. So it depends on the meeting. If it's a regular public monthly meeting, you may restrict it to 5 minutes or something. If it's a meeting like a public hearing for a Butterfield project or any of the other projects I talked about earlier, we'd have to come up with something that gave the opportunity, if someone really had a concern, give them additional time to be able to speak and be heard. So,
Mike, what would you?
Going to the village board meetings over the past 3 years has been, at times, one of the most frustrating experiences in my entire life, because none of the materials are made available beforehand. So you're sitting through a 3-hour meeting, and if you want to comment on agenda item 2, you have to wait till the end, and depending whether it's a workshop or a regular meeting, it's either 5 minutes, or you have to put your name on a sheet, or the mayor arbitrarily decided one night that you just couldn't speak, even though I followed all the rules. So, like I said earlier, I think the proactive disclosure of all of these materials before the meeting, definitely podcasting of every meeting. There's no reason why we can't podcast an iPhone, or use an iPhone to podcast the planning board or the HDRB or any of the other ones. It's relatively cheap technology. Everybody has it. And whether we allow, if we do have this proactive disclosure of the materials, maybe at the beginning of meetings you have a 2-minute speaking period where people can make comments on the agendas, and then have a 5-minute comment period after the meeting. So you can speak your piece at the beginning, listen to, sit through the 3-hour meeting if need be, and then you can say some more. I also don't see the need for 3-4-hour meetings if we're efficient. And maybe perhaps if people knew what was going to be discussed at the meeting, showed up either with written comments or verbal comments, that we could cut down these meeting lengths to maybe, a manageable length, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Last night we were there for 2.5. Sometimes we're there until midnight. Depends on what's on the agenda.
Stephanie?
I think that with the election and the change in the administration, I think that we're all going to see sort of a different quality of participation by the board members themselves and people feeling comfortable participating in public comment just by virtue of the fact there's going to be new people on the board. There's going to be a sort of a change in the makeup of the board. But as to sort of rules that you apply to who can speak or when they can speak, I certainly believe that it's important to be able to run an efficient agenda and be able to run a meeting and conduct the business of the village. But I do think it's very, very important that if people bother to show up, I mean, that's what do they say, that's like what 99% of life is showing up. If people bother to show up at the village board meetings, they should be welcomed in. There should be nobody who should feel like this isn't my village board meeting. This isn't my meeting also. This isn't a meeting for me, about me and my interests. I mean, again, I said it earlier, we're a small community, and sort of everyone should be able to have a seat at this table, so that when people come to these meetings, they should be made to feel welcome. And I think that people can, reasonably understand if somebody feels deeply and earnestly about an issue that's very close to their heart, that maybe that person does need to be able to go on for 8 minutes and say and relieve themselves of their concern, and I think there's value in that. I do believe there's value in that, and sometimes when people do get up like that, I feel like, and if they're being told to stop talking, I feel like they can have some of my time. Like I'll cash in my time for them because they should be able to speak. And I'm not in favor of unwieldy meetings, but I don't think that necessarily means it's an unwieldy meeting. So.
Okay, I think we're up to closing time here. Statements. This is maybe your last collective chance to address the folks, but if we can keep it to, in the spirit of the last question, about 3 minutes, I think we'd all appreciate that, and you would probably serve yourselves better. So, but I can't save anybody from themselves. Let's start with you, go back reverse order.
First of all, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. In closing, I believe the Village of Cold Spring is on the right path towards coming together and moving forward. In the 36 years that I've grown up here and am now raising a family here, I've witnessed a lot of changes. People have come and people have gone, but the one constant has been the love of the people for the village. Cold Spring, like no other place I've been, instills a sense of stewardship in its residents. It's what's led me to graduate school for historic preservation, led me to return after college and start to put down roots here, and I believe that's what's led everybody up here on this, at the table tonight to run for office, is the love of the village. Cold Spring is at a precarious point in its history, and I think we need people to lead, who not only understand our history, but who also understand the reality of Cold Spring in 2013. We now have a comprehensive plan for the next 20 years, but we still lack the land use and zoning foundation to fully implement it. I believe this needs to be a priority moving forward. We have an opportunity to create something positive at Butterfield by working in partnership with the developer rather than against him. There are future developments and plans for Marathon that need to be addressed, and very large, expensive infrastructure projects that need to be planned for the near future. We need leaders who are willing to listen to all sides of the issues, who will pledge to work for all of Cold Spring residents, whether it's working to build a community center for our youth or a nutrition center for our seniors, who are willing to make decisions for the betterment of the greater good rather than just a few. I pledge to you, the voters, that my door will always be open, my phone always on, and that no matter what the message you wish to convey, whether praise or criticism, that I will always listen and work for everybody. I'm not asking for your vote just on March 19th. Each and every time you phone, email, or attend a meeting, you are there to check up on your vote. You are there to see if your vote was warranted. Even after March 19th, I will continue to work hard to do justice to the trust that you've put in me. I do not take your vote lightly. Rest assured that what you see before you is a candidate who will fight for you. So please vote for me on Tuesday, March 19th, and thank you again, everybody, for coming out. And thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you for coming out. Thank you, Gordon, for hosting. I just wanted to summarize sort of why I am running. I do have skills and personal attributes and experience that I think can benefit the village and that can help make good things happen here. And my focus is not just on sort of immediately what's in front of me. I think long-term planning is very important to our village. Change is afoot. It always is. We can't stop change. But one thing that we can do is prepare for the future and keep in mind what we want our village to look like in 5, 10, 20 years. So I have in mind focusing on just not the needful things that need action immediately, but also on preparing a set of midterm and long-term goals and helping the village achieve those goals. I think I'm suited for the work, and I hope you think I'm suited for the work too. Thank you again, and Bruce.
Well, again, thank you all for coming. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I just want to continue all the work that I've done in this community. I think my heart's there, always been there. I know that, as I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of projects that we all have to look at in the near future. I'm going to mention some of them. The relining project we started last year is going to be completed this spring, next couple of months actually. The dams, we had a presentation just 2 weeks ago. We did a site visit up there the past 2 years to note the conditions of our dams. We have a report, take a follow-up site visit with the engineers. That project within itself is going to run about $3 or $4 million. The fall of this year, we're supposed to be working on the boat club cleanup. We're not sure the total extent of that yet. They're supposed to come back with something in the next month or two. The record of decision, the last we knew, was 20%. That's going to be a project that's supposed to start in the fall to next spring of 2014. The water treatment plant, if you were at our meeting last night, you heard Greg Phillips, the water superintendent, went over a bunch of items that we're doing there. The wastewater treatment plant, another project that we have to stay on board with right now. The work is required right now, can't be delayed. The West Street pump station, as you well know, was damaged quite extensively from Hurricane Sandy. We're looking at replacing all the equipment there, which is going to be funded mainly through FEMA, but at the same time we're looking for mediation to move that location to more towards Market Street, to a higher elevation, so if we do have another hurricane, we're not going to run into the same situations. Our Market Street pump station needs some work. We're waiting for some approvals through Metro North to continue that project. A project you haven't heard a lot about, I sort of touched on last week, was the Parrott Street. Once the western side of Parrott Street, the old foundry homes, there's a septic system that's it's all clay. Had a couple residents that ran into a situation there a couple of years ago. Most of that septic system itself is only a few feet off the back of those homes. There's garages, there's decks, there's pools, there's everything that were built over that septic line over the years. Trustee Falloon's familiar with that. It's one that we have to look at. It's something that when something happens there, it may require a relining or something. Main Street septic, we just recently worked on. A lot of that work was done. We had some water infiltration problems that was worked on in the past 2 years. Come to the firehouse. I'm not saying in any order here, I'm just going down the list that I have. The last few days, somebody brought to my attention the wall that fell down up at Bob Dwyer's location. We went through, I checked on that today. That is a village issue. We have some work at the Tots Park, putting sidewalks around the Tots Park. Finished the sidewalk on Route 9D to get over to the ball field parking lot. And then we have our dock, our main dock, even though I was involved with that lighting and that rail project. The bulkhead of the dock is nothing that needs immediate repair, but when you start talking of 5, 10-year, multi-year capital projects, it's putting a plan like this that the board can work on it over the next 5, 10, 15 years and figure out the best way of funding these things. So, and of course, our comprehensive plan is a long-range plan. So everything that we're trying to do with the comprehensive plan, whether it requires zoning changes or whatever it is, it's looking at the entire process and how we're going to go about tackling each one of these items and coming up with best solutions. So I'm hoping you'll select me again for another 2-year term. I think I can work hard to accomplish whatever we're going to do this year. And then, again, there's going to be changes to this board that I think you're all going to be pleased with. Communication is the best thing, and I think you're going to get that with whoever you decide. So I hope you do consider me, because I still got the energy to do another term or more. And I thanks you for your vote on March 19th.
We reached that, I think we're just about exactly, 1 hour, after which they say no souls are saved. So I'll just close with a observation from my long time in this world of public service, where I have not chosen to run for office, but in a position of being within many governments, advising those who have. And I have never, ever lost a profound sense of the difference between what it takes to advise someone and what it takes to actually get out there and run for office and seek office, ask for votes, make the case for themselves. There's a separating line there. I think it was LBJ, in fact, I'm pretty sure, because Jack Valenti, who was invited in, and all the things he had to deal with, eminent experts, the Kissingers and others of the world, in a crucial state of Vietnam, and they gave all of this worthy advice, and they left. And LBJ said, yeah, very impressive, but I'd feel a lot better if one of them had ever run for dog catcher. And these folks are running to take the responsibility. And whatever we think, our opinions are, I have the highest respect and gratitude for those who are willing to step up and do this. And among the many blessings I have found here in this town, in this village, are the quality of people willing to do this, for which I am very grateful, and to all of you. With that, we will close this portion, and then I'm going to have a little conversation with the man I can still, I guess, call Ralph before he's Mr. Mayor, but he's going to be he's the mayor. I have a personal reason for it. One of the many people I've advised in the years who did not survive me or my advice was a former mayor of New York. I was quite close to him, John Lindsay. And I got to know what a lonely position that really is.
Thanks.
In fact, he had a story of someone calling or hounding in the office and saying, "I will take nothing lower than the mayor." And John replied, "There is no one here lower than the mayor." So, Mr. Mayor-to-be.
Yes.
How are you going to lead and be a part of this legislature and this village? How do you see the relationship between one of the legislators and you as the leader of the village and our mayor?
Well, I don't know as much leading as more of a guiding or being the front person, but not necessarily putting myself out there. I mean, you know, it's been very clear in the last 4 years that the people expect more than the mayor to run the show. I think, you know, in the past 4 years, some of the problems we had is lack of communication. And, you know, it was mentioned with the last candidates that communication is a tremendous issue. I believe communication, or lack thereof, has gotten us into some of the situations we're in. And I don't want to be part of that. I know that the 3 that are running, plus the 2 standing board members, don't want that to happen. I believe we can get a lot more done by being, you know, a collaborative, unified group, and I think that'll carry on to everybody else. That'll also portray, I'm hoping to portray to the rest of the boards and the rest of the village that we are truly in this together. I mean, you know, the old saying 100 years ago that it takes a village to raise a kid. Well, it takes a village to get everything done. We don't get paid a lot, so we're not only are we your leaders, but we're pretty much volunteering most of our time. Our fire department's volunteers. The highway guys spend a lot of time doing a lot of things for not a lot of money. So, for me, it's really about more guiding and, okay, leading, but not being in charge to the fact that people look at me like I'm better than everybody, because that's not what anybody wants to see. That's not what anybody wants to hear. And they want to know that, when you're talking to me, you're talking to the whole board. And, same as the complaint department. All of our, in my opinion, all of our arguments on the board will end in a vote. So that's, the way it needs to be done. It's just, there's no other way to do it. I'm not going to go say, I'm going to do something, get it done, and then the board says, why did you do that? How did you do that? You're alienating your board, and you're alienating those who voted for you. So that will not be, my approach will not be to get out in front of everybody and micromanage, no bullying. It's not going to be tolerated. As the last 4 years, we're actually, as much as I enjoyed being a trustee and serving everybody, the last 4 years were tough on me. I mean, there was times when, they weren't as enjoyable as they could be. Now, I understand it's not supposed to be enjoyable, but I don't believe that. I think it can be. I really do, because if the people support you and they say nice things about you, you feel good about yourself, you feel good about your village, people feel good about you, and, we live happily ever after. I mean, that's foolishly optimistic, but that's the way I'll do it, and that's the way I'll do it the whole entire time, and I'll portray that to my board, to the residents, to the other boards, and I hope that they, they're willing to follow.
That's good. How have you given some thought to how you will work with individual board members?
Well, I've thought a lot. The beauty of this, and I feel horrible for the trustees running against each other. It's a horrible position. They are not, by any means, we are not professional politicians. We have, lives, families, and this is very stressful for all of us, especially for them. One of the reasons I chose mayor, because it was unopposed. So it's really tough for them. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, you were working from it, which is now that you.
Oh yes, no, I'm sorry. I have thought about it.
With them. How are you going to actually?
If you take a look at all the boards, their jobs are very, very different. The people on them are very different. The leaders or the chair people of every board are very different. So I think one of the problems you have is that you cannot treat each one the same. I have got to speak to some of them, to get the feeling of what they need, what they want, what we think we can help them. And again, our board is going to offer all the help in the world to them to get them through any of their problems, because they are an extension of us. And if we don't do it right, we're going to keep going down the path of the perception that, one applicant said to me that one of the boards, which I will not name, said to them it felt like cruel and unusual punishment. And obviously that's not true, but that is the perception that this one person, felt. And I think that's a perception that we would like to change, to address. And unfortunately, it takes time, money to get through the boards. Depending on the size of your project, I have the utmost respect for our boards and what they do. They work their tails off for no money, and they have the interest of all of us at hand. But back to the question, my goal is myself and our boards will speak to the board chair people, the liaisons, them individually, to get to a consensus of how we think we need to do business. And, it won't be, there will be no fights, but there may be some harsh criticism, but it'll be from the board, not from me going to the board and grandstanding and telling I don't agree with what they're doing. It'll be a conversation with the board. How do we address this issue, and together we'll decide how to address the issue. We'll speak to that board and explain to them what we feel they should be doing going forward to serve the public and the people that are coming before them with applications.
Good. Now, you've been a trustee, of course, and you're now thinking about what's about to happen that's too late for you to back out of now.
No, it's not. Absolutely.
Have you thought about what are the, let's call it crudely, sort of levers of power or instruments of persuasion that are available to a mayor in this village, in this context, that you might find yourself able to use to create some of this comity and consensus that you seek?
Well, if you look at the people that are in this village, that participate in the village, or even stay in the background, there's an incredible wealth of knowledge, experience, just a ton of things that people have to offer. So myself, I mean, I feel that, you know, I have a pretty good relationship with everybody or anybody that I can speak to, and they can speak to me. I'm very approachable. So my goal is will not do this alone. Will not. You know, my board I'll have the support of my board or the conversation with my board. Those that have encouraged me and helped me to get to where I am. You know, I haven't forgotten anybody that has helped me, and I have had help from all sides of the lines, whatever they may be or you may perceive them to be, but I've gotten help from everybody, and I continue down that path. You know, because I don't agree with your stance, that doesn't mean you don't have something to offer myself and the rest of the board to get things done, and I will not be foolish enough to put myself out there and take a beating because I was too stubborn to listen, to ask, or to get help from somebody. You know, and that was, you know, because it was the questions that, you know, what are you, crazy? No, I have a plan to use everybody to my benefit, to the village's benefit, to the village board's benefit. And not only that, when people are supporting you, truly supporting you, they're not bashing you. And then when the others that aren't supporting you are bashing you, you have a consensus of people that will now support you because you've listened. You know, they've seen that you've taken some of their ideas and used them and put them out there. And, you know, so, you know, that's how I plan on getting through this. And it's 2 years. I mean, if I lock myself in the basement for 2 years, I'll be fine. No, we'll get through this. And you know what? We'll get through this together. And I mean, you know, look, people came out to this. I mean, you know, they're interested. They want to hear. They you know, hopefully they're all going to vote for me, you know, and you know, and that's, I want them to be happy that they voted for me. And in 2 years, when nobody dares run against me again, I want them to vote for me again.
Well, assuming that there's not a massive write-in for Kermit the Frog, this is likely to be the case. I hope you're not embarrassed by that.
That's
if
okay.
It happens, I've been hearing a lot of Kermit stuff. Yeah, and the frogs are starting to come out.
Okay.
There are a lot of them out there. But let me ask you this: you're a really great guy.
Thank you.
And people like you, and you get along well with folks. One thing that I've found chief executives, though, sooner or later face is, what do you do when nice doesn't work?
I rely on my board to back me. I'll be nice, you know, until you bury me. So I have, you know, that's who I am. Well, that's how I was raised. I'm just a nice guy. Not all the time. I mean, you know, I'm married, so obviously I can't be nice all the time. Happily married, though, of course. You know, so when nice doesn't work,
you've learned not to be right all the time.
oh God, no. But you know, that's also part of, you know, it's funny you say that, but you know, I view this job a lot like family business, marriage, you know, the things that actually you have to get through life in. If you don't take those life lessons learned, it's of no use to you. And again, I'm wrong all the time, and that's why I'm happily married. And, you know, but we have a board, you know, our board together, you know, I'll be wrong plenty of times with them, but every time I'm wrong, it'll end in a vote. And, you know, going forward, when nice doesn't work, I'll do what I have to based on not being nice. And, you know, I'm raising 2 kids, so I'm not nice all the time. And my board, our board, we will back each other. We will, you know, when the nicest doesn't work, we will make the hard decision through a vote. So it won't, you know, it won't be on me when things go wrong. It'll be on us. This is us. This is our board, our village. So, you know, I can be nice and mean at the same time because my board told me to be that way.
Let me do something that we've got just a few minutes to do that we haven't had a chance to do before. And you're going to be getting a lot of this. You've already had a lot of it. Let me turn to the people who've been good enough to come out here and say, because you were, and you've been patient and sat through this, you have a free shot at the mayor-to-be. He can't quite do anything to you yet when nice doesn't work. Is there anything anybody would like to ask our soon-to-be mayor? Yes.
I have a concern. Having worked with Mayor Phillips and then known Seth and his work some, the mayoral job seems to be huge. It seems like it could consume 40 hours a week. You have a full-time job. How are you going to juggle those hours?
Well, my shift work, I worked 2 days a week, 24-hour shifts. So I'm out of the village 48 hours a week. So all the in-between days, I work 1 day on and 3 days off. So there's the minimum that I can be in the village in the village office is 3 days. If I'm working a Monday and a Friday, then you only have me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But any other week, you have me in the village office a minimum of 4 days. Because of my background, the fire department is a paramilitary organization. The chain of command is very important. So when I'm not there, the deputy mayor and the rest of the board, they will know their job and they will do it well. So when I'm not around, you will have the peace of mind that I'm not there. The next person in the chain is the deputy mayor and so forth. So, I unfortunately I do have a full-time job, but thanks to my schedule, that full-time job allows me to have a full-time and a half job, which would be the village.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor-elect.
Yes, sir.
That's the proper term.
Not yet.
Not quite. I see two things being made, in your 2 years, two parcels or two areas of the village being the main concerns. One, Butterfield. I just want your general impressions of both. What do you see as the best outcome of the Butterfield parcel? And the lower village has incurred or taken on water twice within a year, and people are voting with their feet. You can see it already. I've counted 2 businesses and 3 residences that are leaving that. So what do you, just in general terms, what's your take on how you would approach both of those issues?
The Butterfield issue, I believe the mixed use is the best deal for all of us. The zoning is a problem that doesn't allow that. So we have to get through that process. Again, going back to communication. I think between the new administration, the developer, the others, other people amongst the village that have great ideas, I just think we'll just very diligently work through getting that to a point where we can move the project forward. Mr. Galaro has done a lot of work. I believe that we all got to a consensus that the current past site plan is what everybody believes is the most beneficial for everybody. He has worked incredibly hard to get the neighbors on that street to agree with that, which is tremendous because those are the people that live there. I mean, we all have this vested interest, but it comes to that neighborhood, to get them to agree with his plan shows you that he's doing a lot of work to please a lot of people. So I think the mixed use is the way to go, and the communication and the zoning change and us working through it very diligently, but at better than a month-to-month pace, we'll get to that. As far as below the tracks, I do not know how to counteract stormwater. One of the things that for our village infrastructure is we're working with FEMA to move, the pump station out of harm's way. As far as the homes go, I mean, living here my whole life and being a part of every storm that, could imagine since '86, I believe the level of Sandy was just ridiculous because it was, in essence, a perfect storm. It was the highest tide of the year, so I don't think we'll get to that level again. But again, I can't speak for Mother Nature. But I don't know what to do with them. And at the same time, our board will, look, whatever comes before us, we'll handle. I don't have that answer. I'm a huge fan of preparedness. So, one of my goals, to get in is to, to be a little better prepared as far as working with the residents, and when you should leave, shouldn't leave. Unfortunately, the sandbag thing, I don't know that helps with the amount of water that the Hudson can spill on us. So, it's just a matter of we will work through and do what we can. We can't afford to buy people out. I mean, I don't know that FEMA's going to, offer that to them. I don't think that a lot of the beauty of the riverfront is the way it is set up. So, I would hate to lose anything that's down there, as far as people moving out. So I just think that a lot of people are going to continue to take their chances, and then, when they give up, then we'll have to cross that bridge when people have, given up.
Just a quick follow-up. Then how do these two storms impact your take on any future proposed development in the floodplain?
Well, one of the problems you have, if you take Irene with, I believe it was the Army Corps of Engineers that told Mr. Galauer what his elevation was to be at. If you take the Irene, which I believe was the largest rain event that I have ever witnessed, Army Corps of Engineers was correct by an inch. So those buildings, Mr. Galauer's buildings were correct by an inch. So any future development will be dictated not by, I don't believe by our board, but by the Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, the people with the true knowledge and power of telling you what to build it at. I don't know that I would want to discourage any development, but at the same time, these will be the conversations we have if a development is planned and what they should do.
We're almost to 9, and we're going to end at 9, so we have time for one more question, I think.
I'll stay if anybody wants.
Yeah, if it's
So,
quick, yeah. Yeah, if not, you
I'll
can
stay.
stay, and there he is. He'll be here afterwards.
you.
Go ahead. Go.
So it's obvious from what we've heard from the candidates for trustee and from you that there's going to be a full plate. There's a lot of tasks to react to. You have to react to the rising floodwaters. You have to react to the Butterfield and from other development, from maybe development at Marathon. You have to react to crumbling infrastructure at various places. But in my mind, one of the jobs of the mayor is also to be a leader, to be a visionary.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree? And if so, what's your vision to go beyond reaction and to bring us someplace else?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, a leader does have to be visionary. One of the problems with being a visionary in parcels that are dictated by access roads, zoning, planning, it's hard. It's very hard to say, well, I see this there, because I don't know that that's even legally possible, or do I want to get out in front of a project and then be accused of, pushing my vision? So I think my vision isn't necessarily of what things should look like, but more how the village should be run, so when things come into us, they're run smoothly. I don't want to put myself out there, to have these visions of grandeur, because small amount of tax revenue is very hard to have great vision. We're very taxed in everything we do. Our boards are overloaded. So, to have visions of grandeur, I think is hard for me, and I would rather envision us working as groups to get to the bottom of things, rather than saying, this is what I see, let's go there. I don't know that that's, in my mind, I'm very cautious about my visions because of what I've learned in the past, and just in general. I'm more of a, let's get all of this stuff that comes before us, shake it around, rattle around, and then move forward, rather than jump out to something and be completely wrong and have to, apologize to everybody because my vision could not be attained for all these insurmountable reasons. So I would have to say my vision is more or less more of how we will function together to get to places we need to go, rather than where I see us going. The vision is to get us there, not where it is.
Well, we're at that time. My sincere apologies to anyone who did not get to ask a question.
Well,
Ralph
we
has
have to
agreed
leave?
to stay.
I want to be a leader. We're not leaving. Can I answer more questions? Oh, wait, I'm not the mayor yet. I'm sorry.
I just want to make good on my commitment and promise to formally end at 9. And so if people, you've agreed
I'll
to
sit
stay.
right here. I don't care.
And I have one last yes or no question to ask of all 4 candidates before we close. Do any of you plan to have an unlisted phone number?
I do now. No.
With that, you have our best wishes, and thank you all for coming, being here, and the mayor is still here. And
Thank you for all. Thanks everyone for coming.